Thank you. John, what a pleasure.
Thank you.
To hear you read from the book. It sort of came to life for me in a much different way than it did when I read it originally. Tell me a little bit about the pitch for this book, because it's a memoir, but there's very little about you. It's not a memoir that starts off, well, I was born in, and then moves along. It's told through different people. So tell me about how you pitched this.
I actually, Bill Clegg was my agent. Does that work?
Oh, yeah. You've disconnected yourself. There we go.
Yeah, but where's this go? Sorry here.
That's quite all right.
Thank you. Bill Clegg was my agent and read a great book, too, about you read recently, Portrait of a Drug Addict. He was my agent, and he said, I want to go to FSG, and Jonathan Galassi was a great editor, and I want to pitch it to them first. We went in. I only had one pitch. I said, I want to write about these people, and I read probably 20 people. Almost every one of them ended up in the book. I want to tell my life because they led more extreme lives than I did, have been braver than I've had to be. They've had to overcome great success, great terrible crimes, great different things. And they said yes. It was really easy. I didn't pitch anybody else. They said yes to the money we wanted, everything. I wrote the book. I turned it in. He was a great editor. I had written one chapter at the end. I thought, I don't talk about my movies in this book. And I already wrote Shock Value, which was about my movies. So I wrote a chapter about it, and I wasn't sure. And I turned to him, he said, there's one chapter. Do we need this chapter? I said, no, that's all I needed to hear. I didn't know that, I didn't think we needed it, because this isn't a book about my movies. So it was great. And then they sent me the cover, which I absolutely adore. And the cover looks like an 8-year-old boy drew it in 3 minutes.
Yeah.
A really great artist did it, I think. And I'm really happy with it. It's really one of my favorite covers. And they never have white covers. In London, they wouldn't put it out white because the shops say it gets dirty too quickly. But that's why it stood out, because there's almost no white covers.
Well, I put a big smudge on it already as we've been sitting here.
So it went very, very, very smoothly. And it took about 3.5 years to write it, probably about 6 to 8 months of research. It's probably the only memoirs that has in the back sources.
Right.
I'm luckily a clipping fanatic. I have my whole life torn out stuff. I had been following the Leslie Van Houten case for really 30 years, so I had all the books, I had all the stuff. I followed everything. So luckily, I was a clipping fanatic that had everything, and did a lot of research. But so it went incredibly smoothly. But I wrote every day. I went in there every day at 8 o'clock and wrote. What you have to do is write the book. Yeah.
You took a photograph or a Polaroid of the blank legal pads.
I always do that. I movie everything. The day I start, I take a picture of the blank pad, and then with the book, I take the picture the day I get the first copy of the book. And it was 3.5 years. But you should always do that when you're doing a writing project.
Well, what does it do? Do you pin it up on the bulletin board?
No, I put it on the cover of the first notebook that I have my ideas in, written down.
Right. And then the idea is just that it spurs you on, or is it just...
No, it's just, I'm a fanatic, I like it's just a reminder of when I really started, how long it took.
Right.
And it's sort of a ritual to go through the very first day. Okay, all my pads are here, all the exact Scotch tape. I use the same big pens, the same pads, because I write by hand.
Right.
And then when it gets to a first draft, Trish, my assistant, who can read my writing, that looks like Cy Twombly drunk, gets it all in and puts it in, and then I start writing it back. It's half written and half cut up. I did many, many drafts. And two of my assistants, Susan and Trish, are both really good editors too. So we did probably 20 drafts even before the publisher ever saw it.
Right. Let's talk a little bit about the people that are included in the book, because you read about Tennessee Williams, and that's one of my favorite chapters in the book, I have to tell you. And there's a number of reasons why. I think that as I read it, that's the moment in the book at which I realized that this was a memoir. It wasn't just a collection of stories about interesting people that you had met along the way. That this was talking as much about you as it was about Tennessee Williams. So there are a couple questions about that is, and you touch on this in the book, and just again in the reading, but I'm curious, I don't know that I would have been able to stop myself from introducing myself to Tennessee Williams had I seen him in that bar.
He was kind of drunk, and I was too.
Yeah.
Not the best way.
Yeah.
And he was surrounded by a whole bunch of people. I didn't need to meet him.
Right.
This was a long time ago.
Yeah,
This was in the 70s.
Right.
And I was by myself, and I just felt like I would be barging over. Now today, everybody loves to barge. They have cell phones jump in your face, and it's like better manners. But I didn't then, and I didn't feel that I would. Now, other people, I barged into Johnny Mathis's house. I did, I went into Bobby Garcia, the marine pornographer's house. So I'm nosy. I don't have any trouble being a writer. He has a license to be rude and go and ask people personal questions about their life. But people confess stuff to me all the time anyway. Right. So it comes easily to me. I would have been a good psychiatrist or a defense lawyer.
Well, why do you think it is that people are able to sort of open up to you? Do you just have that face that people find trustworthy?
Well, I look like a pervert, I taught a first grade class recently, and I was there, and I was all prepared, but I was going to know what I was going to say outside. And I thought, you can't be sitting outside of a grade school looking like you look like. Go sit somewhere else. I thought the cops were going to come. I'm hanging around out front. What was the question?
I think that answer was better than the question would have implied. Why is it, do you think, that people open to you?
Because I think that I will understand and not judge them right away, which is true. I taught in prison. I taught in, I'm interested in terrible stories that happen to people, in a way, and how they deal with it. And I think I learn from that, and I'm interested in human behavior, and everything I write about in this book, or anything that's ever really interested me, there isn't a fair answer to it. If it was that obvious, I would lose interest.
Right. Well, it's interesting. I'm just going to go through and throw out some names at you about people that you write about. I love that you describe Johnny Mathis as beyond race, beyond fame, beyond trying too hard.
He really doesn't try to hurt. He doesn't even do interviews or anything. I just went to see his show. I just saw him again after the book came out in Baltimore last week. He did the Johnny Mathis show. It was sold out. He did no press, nothing. Yeah. It's always sold out. With the straightest people you ever saw in your life. I mean, these people that were there were racier than the Ice Capade crowd. Less racy. Yeah. But he was great, and he was really a good sport about it. He said, "Oh, you made me famous," which is very funny. He's so famous. But he is different than me, certainly. He has been famous for 50 years. His voice still sounds good. He does appeal to middle America, everything that I sort of don't. But at the same time, I always wonder that how close our lives are. I'm backstage with him. He's on tour just like I am. It's the same thing. I have a Christmas show. He has a Christmas show. In his house, he had pictures of Nancy Reagan. I have Patty Hearst. It's just different.
It's just a little, skewed a little bit. Well, and as you say, I think you say this in the book, but you certainly you told me a couple of months ago when we spoke about it. You said at the end of the show, we're still in the dressing room alone.
You are. You're sitting there with too much water. There's always too much. I mean, the dressing room here, there's enough water for a desert town in Nevada.
You know what's made me laugh since we got here tonight is that every time you've gone around a corner, someone said, "Can we get you some water?"
I know.
Can we get you some water? And I know that you have this thing about water.
I like water. I love water, but it's not like that thirsty all the time. It's amazing. Everywhere you go, there's like 40 bottles of water waiting for you. It's a new thing, And now bottled water is politically incorrect.
I know. This is why we have these.
The best water story I have is, I'm name dropping here, Valentino. I was at dinner with a designer, and he's very serious. And they asked me, with water, they said, "You want flat or bubbles?" He said, "Oh, bubbles make you fat." So I always order flat water. Perrier has never touched my lips. Just had a Perrier.
So you have learned and been influenced by the people that you've met. I mean, as I sit here, the mustache is very Little Richard to me.
Well, it was certainly Little Richard in the beginning, yes. Yeah. And he still has it. His is thicker on this. He's using magic marker. I use eyebrow. But yes, it was certainly because Little Richard, I wanted to be the first white guy to have it. Now, white guys always had it, like in like hotel detectives usually have one in 30s movies, right? I don't even know I have it. This is how I hate mustaches. What do you mean you have one, stupid? But I could do it blindfolded, I'm sure. And I save it in case I ever commit a crime and want to go underground. I'll shave it off.
Right. let's talk about, we mentioned there's a long piece in the book about Johnny Mathis, about Little Richard, but there's also pieces in the book that I found fascinating about some artists that I think would be typified by sort of the mainstream as pornographers, but you treat them in a much different way. And I think one of the real pleasures of this book is that there is no judgment on anyone that's in the book. I think that you treat everyone fairly, and I think that you treat them as interesting people who have something to offer, which I don't think David Hurl, for instance, has not frequently been treated that way.
Well, David Hurl, I'll tell you, he takes pictures of psychotic prisoners. Fear is his hard on.
Yeah.
But we just had an art show of his work at the Marion Bosky Gallery, which is a great gallery in Manhattan, and it was reviewed in Modern Painters with full art talk. And I could do the interview with art talk, say, well, hard on is about 45-degree angle to the show. And it really did happen, because I believe they're outsider pornographers.
Right.
Bobby Garcia only takes pictures of Marines, and he gets thousands of Marines to have sex with. How? I don't know. It's pretty amazing. And, he said, well, Marines like 3 things: beer, porn, and pizza. So, there was some good advice. He said, want to go get a Marine right now? No. But I was embedded with Bobby because he had rats. He lives with rats and wild animals.
Well, his house, literally doesn't have a roof or something.
He doesn't even live there anymore.
Yeah.
I don't know where he is now. Yeah. But when I was there, I was sitting there with this giant rooster glaring at me, and 2 pigs just walked by. But the worst was he had newspaper on the floor. I felt little critters moving underneath it. And he said he lived with rats and fed the rats, and he was like Willard. And he wasn't shooting any porn there. No Marine was that horny. Go in there. You get nude with those critters around, I'll tell you.
And Bobby Garcia, is he still alive? Because he was in the hospital the last time.
No, that was David Hurl.
That was David Hurl in the hospital.
He is alive, but he is in the hospital. And he gave an interview in a magazine. They said, well, have you gotten laid recently? He said, oh yeah, a homeless guy in the park who had a fuck the Hollywood police tattoo. He was about 60. He was hot. Yeah. And there's somebody for everybody.
There is somebody for everybody. What is it from those people what did you take away from those people?
I took away from that they were artists. They're outsider artists, though. They don't do it to make money. They don't have any money. They are compelled to do that. And they only watch their own pornography. That is their sex life.
Right.
Like most, you never hear a director say, I watch my own films. That's the only porn they can get off to is their own.
Right.
So you bring up one guy. How about that cute guy? And his body comes with a picture and everything. But I said, are you in touch with any of them? Never.
Yeah.
None, And it wasn't sad in a way to me, because he has this amazing body of work. The problem is there are no universities today that will take those collections. There really isn't. So when they die, it's going to vanish. It's going to be in storage. The relatives want to burn it. They're mortified about it. No, and they don't have any money. So I think Diane Hansen, who's an editor at Taschen Books, she did the big book of butts and pricks. She did this show with me, and she's sort of his caregiver, and she knows where everything is and all the negatives and everything. But it's not going to be there because they're vanishing.
Do you identify with them on some level as an outsider artist? I mean, I think when you started...
No, I'm the opposite of an outsider artist. I'm not Pecker. I wanted New York to notice. I wanted them to come right away. I wasn't naive about anything. I got Variety when I was 12 years old.
Yeah.
So, no, I identify with them as being driven. I'm glad I'm not then.
Right.
I wouldn't especially want their life. I think the work is sexy. They do. But it's gaily incorrect. Certainly. But who am I to say that they aren't happy neurotics, which they see something coming, they know it could bring pain, but it's great sex. If you choose, you're healthy. If you don't choose, you're unhealthy to me.
Right.
So it isn't exactly what is a functional relationship, but I think in a way, it is sexy and it is crazy, and I'm for it. I'm glad they do this work. They're saints of sordidness. They basically have given up their life so we can, sometimes you have to, maybe, I don't know, they lower their self-esteem so others can be raised. I don't know.
Right. Well, I guess, it would be easy to be dismissive of some of these people, but...
Not if you saw the work.
Not if you saw the work. But I'm thinking now of Zorro and...
Scary dicks in these pictures.
Maybe you should start the archive. Have you thought of...
No. I did an art show. I curated a show because it was great. I like New York. It was his best ones.
Right. There's a lot in the book about parents Zorro, who was a stripper, a lesbian stripper who you described as so butch. She was sort of beyond Johnny Cash, I think.
She looked like Johnny Cash, yeah. But to me, it was amazing. She was a stripper but had a daughter, but she was a really bad mother, and everybody would say that, except her daughter loves her and turned out fine. But her daughter lived in full poverty with like drug addicts, and she made $1,000 a night at gambling parties in the house. She used to pick up her mother, drive her at 11 years old in her Continental. But her mother did. The daughter turned out great. Right. She loved her daughter. Her daughter knew that. No one in school knew that she was the honor student, went to grade school, Catholic school, and at home they had no heat. Zorro was there flipping out with like parties, but Zorro wasn't. If you really know your mother loves you, you can turn out all right, even though the police would have taken her away in 1 second, or the welfare agencies.
Well, you talk about another woman named Esther, who was a bartender, who was probably treated the sort of, as I think you call them in the books, the bums and people that came into her bar.
She was like Viridiana. I mean, she had a bar that you could only get in if you were a bum.
Yeah.
It was like VIPs, but it was like Studio 54, only in reverse. But you had to give her your welfare check, and she doled out the money, and when you died, she left everything. So in the attic for her house was little suitcases of souls that were left. But she loved those people.
Well, she helped bury them. I mean, she would look
helped bury them. Yeah, but she always was looking for the diamond in their pocket.
Right. But her family. I mean, I found that the way you write about their family is very interesting because her children were very proud of the legacy that Esther left behind.
Even though they knew that it was horrifying. I mean, they would go shopping with her and she'd pull out what's called a flapper. A slapper. I mean, that's like a thing wrapped in duct tape. You just beat somebody in the face with. She would do that in stores, and people got in her way. And Esther had the filthiest mouth. She would have to say, pass that motherfucking cocksucker. Every word was a cuss word, to the point where it was beyond Tourette syndrome. It was amazing. The last thing she said was, "Move your coat, asshole." Those were her last words.
That's an epitaph for the gravestone right there. I love that. Well, but tell me then about the kids of Esther and Zorro. I know that for Zorro's daughter, it was kind of like coming out of the closet in some way.
Coming out of the closet, not sexually, I mean about having Zorro.
Absolutely, yeah.
And she had told really very few people about it. And she had just separated from her husband and had a new boyfriend who was a doctor. And he knew nothing about it. She said, "I've got something to tell you. Read this." He was like, "Oh, look at that." And when the book came out, she said a lot of people, she was happy about the reaction because she was sort of told everybody about this. And she is a survivor, and her mother did love her. It just wasn't, talk about an untraditional upbringing. This is so why anybody can ever claim that you have to have a certain type of people to raise a child. I mean, even bad parents can turn out good kids.
Right. Well, when you say things like that, I want to talk about Leslie Van Houten in a second, which is the most serious chapter in the book.
Yeah.
But when you say things like that, it seems to me almost as though the book kind of has a political agenda of some sort, which I think all art does. But there are no political figures in the book, particularly. I mean, none that we would consider. There's no the one that ran for mayor. There's no.
That means I want the book to stay in print. It has to be. If you do a politicians in 3 years, nobody cares about it. It's over, even if they're big or not.
Right.
Look in the section of where Watergate books are in used bookshops.
That's right.
That is the worst section on the lowest shelf, way in the
back in the corner.
Yeah.
Do you consider it a political book, though?
Yes, I think all humor is political, and the only way you ever get people to change is to make them laugh and they'll listen. I think everything in the book is political. Yes.
Well, it's interesting. Speaking of that, when you were reading earlier, when you talk about Jesus on the cross and how people's suffering has been extended now, and then you get a laugh with the audience.
The straightest Republican woman said that to me.
Right.
I was shocked by it because it sounds blasphemous, but it isn't in a way. It's just saying that even if you believe that he suffered for our sins, well, in life, some of us have to suffer even worse.
Right.
Are we suffering for him?
Well, hearing it read to an audience was interesting for me as I'm standing backstage, because I hear it gets a big laugh. There's a line that gets a big laugh, and then you talk about all your friends who suffered and died of AIDS. And I was just wondering about the writing of something like that and finding a balance then between what you would consider to be the laugh lines or the humorous part and the more serious stuff.
Well, I test it because I have a show, a spoken word act called This Filthy World that I tour constantly with. So I test out material.
So it changes all the time?
It changes all the time. I always update it, and I test something. If I tested it, it might end up in the book if I know it worked. And that's how I work out the timing on those kind of things.
Right.
That some things can be funny, some can't. You can push religion. Whenever you start talking about religion, it gets real quiet because everybody thinks you're going to really say something sacrilegious. I don't know that I did say anything sacrilegious, really. I'm questioning how I was brought up and everything, but all religions, I believe in the basic goodness of people. I think that is religious and spiritual. I'm just saying all the stories I've heard about every religion seem preposterous to me. I don't say they're wrong. I don't know. I mean, there could be anything even worse, but I don't get why people say Scientology is wrong. Like, a spaceship isn't more insane to me than being on a cross. They're all crazy to me. So, and I'm happy if you believe in it. My mother's a Catholic, and it brings her comfort. She doesn't push it on me. Fine. Right. But they always try to make you do it, and they always start telling you they're right, and they know. That causes wars. I'm against that.
Right. Well, I mean, I think what you've just said, too, it shows the kind of even-handedness that this book has. I mean, you're dealing with some kind of outrageous subjects.
And that last chapter is a humorous chapter. I really don't expect people to come to my door and move in and with their stolen art books, and, like I would hate it.
You just want to make that very clear, right?
Well, depends on the art book.
Or any of you.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right. Let's talk a little bit about some of the manifesto of the book. You say things like, "Don't shock your parents, shock your peers."
Well, if you want to start a trend, you get on the nerves of people that are 3 years older than you in high school, that are the coolest ones, that are just over with. Yeah, and wear what they hate. Wear the one thing in the thrift shop that nobody would wear.
Right. Yeah. Which is what you did in your
I
own
did.
life.
And other people I know the best was Mink just did it once, but to go the day after Halloween and buy all the used Halloween costumes. Just wear them all year. Every day. I'm a skeleton, I'm a witch, I'm a fairy princess. And they're real cheesy looking. And the day after Halloween, they're a nickel. Buy the whole rack. And just wear them out every day. Hi. Oh, you know her, the girl that wears the Halloween costume. Oh, her.
But you weren't necessarily doing it, because you were doing it as well. You were buying...
I wore thrift shop. Oh, God, yeah. If you're 20 years old, you're a fool if you buy expensive clothes.
Right.
You should, wear Band-Aids, draw on... I think young people should draw on old express. So to mock our generation's fear of age, you should draw on bags, you should shave male pattern baldness, you should draw on wrinkles. And that great little fashion consultant now, the 14-year-old girl that's online, she dyed her hair gray. Yeah. I love that. It's like really good to just mock our fear of age by, when you're really cute, just purposely looking old and ugly.
But I get the impression from reading the book, and forgive me if I'm wrong about this, but you weren't really necessarily trying to do it to be outrageous. Your goal wasn't just to simply shock people, it was to
have a look. Fashion's important. I do follow fashion. I think fashion is an art. I think fashion is humor. It's how you present yourself to the world. It's the first thing you say when you see somebody.
Right.
So, I'm for it, but I don't take it that seriously, but it is an industry. I follow it. I think it's funny. That's why I wrote about Comme des Garçons.
Which is the funniest chapter in the book.
She has insane fashion. You can wear expensive clothes, but in Baltimore, I wear her coats, and people say, that's a shame about that jacket. So, you're not bragging. It's the opposite of showing off labels like, this cost a fortune. Only you know. And they think you got beat in the thrift shop.
So it's subversive.
Yeah, Warhol did it. He wore, like, under a turtleneck, $300,000 women's diamond necklaces. I love that. Yeah. Only he knew.
Yeah.
That's fashion.
But today, I don't see an individuality in spirit today as much as I think I have in the past.
Yeah, what's going on? It's because of the internet that everybody stopped doing it. I mean, I grew up in all the things. The first thing I saw was juvenile delinquents, then beatniks, then hippies, then punks, then punk, then grunge, then rappers. Then what? There hadn't been anything for 20 years that are pissing people off. Get busy. They're too busy online. No, but so they aren't thinking about doing that. And there's no fashion because people don't go out. They're online.
Right. Well, you're sort of early film work, and we're here to talk about the book, but I just mentioned that I always thought that you were kind of a hippie. I think in some ways identified with hippies, but you were doing things that I thought were really punk rock. You were sort of making films about the death of hippies,
There wasn't punk rock yet, but definitely Pink Flamingos was a punk rock movie.
Yeah.
I mean, but certainly, yes. Multiple Maniacs was a movie we made at the height of the peace and love thing. It was about Divine butchering people and eating them. But hippies came to see it and they laughed because I was making fun of hippily correct. Right. There was such a thing. It's just like political correctness. Right. Even though I think all my movies are politically correct, actually. But so yes, I wasn't a hippie. I wasn't like. I didn't sit around. Like even the Beatles got on my nerves, So I wasn't that kind of hippie. I was a yippie, which was I like to go to riots because you always met cute boys. I still like riots. I mean, my type is Earth First Eddie, even though I don't believe in that at all, and they have BO and everything. But I like the idea that they're sitting in a tree and don't wash their hair and blow up places. I think it's fun, But as a fantasy. Right. I don't really want Earth First Eddie.
Yeah. Is it the chaos that you're attracted to?
But they're extremes, that it makes me laugh. I mean, and then they burn down brand new homes. But then it's the dumbest thing because they build them again with insurance. They use twice the materials. But I still follow them. Because they have a secret world and they're nutty. And that's the kind of thing you do when you're 16 and then you go to jail for 30 years. You regret it when you're 50. You thought, why did I burn down that housing development?
In along that theme, let's talk about Leslie Van Houten. This is the most serious chapter in the book. There's not a joke in there. This is the one that I think has gotten probably the most attention of all the chapters in the book. Let's start with talking about why you were attracted to the LaBianca.
Well, it's the whole thing about, really, I've known her for a long time now, but even before that, she was one of the Manson family, one of the three girls that was guilty of the LaBianca murders. She went in that house, she stabbed Mrs. LaBianca when Tex told her to. She was totally out of her mind. She thought she was an elf. She believed it was the end of the world. I mean, but yet, she believes, she should have gone to jail. Nobody thinks she shouldn't. She's been there 40 years. But as I write in 40,000 words in the book, basically, she has taken on the full responsibility for every single thing she did. I do believe that people can get better. Right. When you're a 17-year-old girl that meets one of the most notorious madmen, pimps, really, of our time, and becomes part of a cult. I've seen what cults do. But she is beyond that. She doesn't just say he made me do it. She doesn't say drugs made me do it, even though both of those things were hugely important. Right. She said he wouldn't have been a leader if I wasn't a follower. I shouldn't have taken those drugs. So all I'm saying is she has been taught she did not get life without parole. They say, well, the first trial she got the death penalty. She did, but that was turned against. She had a second trial, a hung jury for diminished capacity. She could have walked them. She can't say that either. She can't say, but in my second trial, the third trial, she was found guilty and got life, not life without parole. She is anything but this guy that just happened here, this psychopathic guy. She was, he's coming out to she should have gone to jail. What I'm saying is, though, that I believe people can get better. And I believe for 40 years. And in that chapter, I take the most devastating things the victim's family have said against her release and say all of them too, which I have to do, I think, to be fair. There isn't a fair answer. I'm saying she's my friend. I like her. She could be at this festival. No one would ever imagine that this happened to her. She's been there for 40 years. She wants to not be famous. She wants to vanish. She has job offers to disappear and live the rest of her life helping people. And as she said, becoming the person I would have been if I had never met him. That's all I can hope for. I understand why the family doesn't want her to get out.
Right. How does she feel about what you wrote? Because initially, when you you approached her to do a story for Rolling Stone magazine, I think, she said, no, I don't want this written about.
Well, that was 20 years ago,
yeah.
and she said it was really hard to read. How would you like to read 40,000 words about the worst night of your life?
Yeah.
She said it was very hard to read. But she said today that she feels the response that people say stuff to her on the radio and everything. So I think she's happy I wrote it. I think she wished no one cared. She wished that it had never happened and that people would forget about it. But it gets worse and worse and worse and worse by the notoriety. But she's a Halloween costume. Somebody's going to go as her as Halloween. Yeah. And that is greatly depressing to her, which certainly should be.
I'm going to just take one more question because you mentioned Divine earlier, and I was wondering, as I read the book, William S. Burroughs called you the Pope of Trash. You were a friend of his. Divine, obviously very close. We were talking about him backstage before we came out here. Why aren't those figures in the book?
Because I wrote about them in shock print, which is still in print. It's never gone out in print in America since 1980. I wrote about all those stories and did everything about it. And I thought there's another book about him. And it just seemed this was about now. And I'm still shocked to find this dead. We all bought graves in the same graveyard. I'm going to be buried there in Mink Stoll, Paparan, and all the it's like People's Temple cult grave. Come on down. We're all going to be buried there. So it's we call it Disgrace Land.
Well, we are recording this for posterity's sake, so I imagine there's questions out there in the audience somewhere. Just raise your hand and shout it as well as you can, and I'll feed it into the posterity machine here, and they can take over. Yes, sir?
Mr. Waters, is there anybody that you would like to have in your films that you haven't had in your films?
Go ahead.
The question was, is there anyone that you haven't worked with yet in your films that you would like to?
Sure, Meryl Streep. Imagine her doing a Baltimore accent. She'd be great. Yeah.
Anybody else?
I'm going to give you a chance then to think of, because I know there's questions out there and people are maybe too shy to ask them. In the book, you are not shy to say, you know what, I've rethought some things since I was younger.
Certainly the Manson stuff. In the beginning, I had made fun of it. I visited Tex Watson, I made fun of it, and certainly used it in a punk rock way. So, hey, why is Marilyn Manson such a person? It became the boogeyman against straight people. I feel bad about that. I used that in a way that was irresponsible to the victims' families, which I learned a lot about from teaching in jail, and from knowing Leslie all these years, and seeing those poor victims come out. They don't want to be there. They don't want to have to buy an outfit to be photographed in. They don't want to have to tell this horrible story. They said, we had a lovely family name that is notorious. So I understand that now. I saw it in a different way. So it's not like I dedicated Pink Flamingos to them as the Manson girls, and I don't even know them then. But in a way, I went to the original Manson trial and made Pink Flamingos right afterwards. It was exactly because I went to that trial that movie happened. Right. But yeah, it was irresponsible in a youthful way. Yes.
Right. I think there was somebody over here.
Yep.
There's a line in the chapter where you say that if she, never was released from jail, your friendship would basically be over.
No, I said to her in the book that if she ever gets out, she never has to see me again. And people said, well, what did that mean? And what it meant is, you owe me nothing. Just because I visited you all these years and helped you out, if you wanted to get out of jail and vanish and never see me again, you owe me nothing. That's what I'm saying. Because when you visit people from jail a long time, sometimes they begin to feel that they owe you all this because you helped and everything. And I'm saying, I'm not doing it for that. I'd love to see her, certainly. We'd still be friends. But if you wanted to completely vanish and leave this behind and go somewhere else, you don't have to call me every month and you don't have to see me. I wouldn't be offended by that. So I was just trying to let her know that if she ever gets freedom, it's real freedom.
As far as Leslie Van Houten, I've seen her interviewed and she looks like your basic soccer mom now. But do you feel that she gets a bad rap sometimes because Squeaky Chrome, she's painted with the same brush as Squeaky Chrome, who still is very much on Mansonite?
Well, She's asking about Squeaky Fromm, and I do not know Squeaky. I know one thing, Squeaky was released. Squeaky never actually did kill anyone. She aimed the gun at President Ford. It's like, it's not like a misdemeanor. But I have to say it. We were very nervous when Squeaky let out because she thought, oh, is she going to start all this Manson, pro-Manson stuff, which would look terrible because people get them mixed up. They don't know. A lot of people when Squeaky got out wrote to me and said, tell your friend got out. But she didn't. She left the day before she was released to avoid the press. She has never given an interview since she's been out. So maybe she too is over it. I hope so. I hope she broke away.
Anybody else? Yeah, we're in the back there. You're pointing somebody else there.
Have you seen the film Leslie? My name is.
I haven't seen it, and I was drawn into a phony controversy about it. I haven't seen the movie. It might be good. My big problem was the title, because how would you feel if you see a title called My Name is Evil? Her name isn't that, and they've changed it in America to Charlie Manson, My Name is Evil, so obviously it didn't work. It was very devastating to her to even know that this thing existed, no matter if I haven't seen the movie, and it might be a great movie, and I never commented on it. I was tricked into commenting on it accidentally by a journalist. I have nothing against that movie. I've never seen it. The title was very, very hurtful to her. And imagine when you've been trying to get parole and your hearings come up and you hear there's a movie that you know nothing about called Leslie, My Name is Evil. Come on. It can't be good news.
Maybe time for a couple more, if we have anybody. Someone over there somewhere.
Do you think that there's still hope for gay wit now? Because I know that, like, when you're talking about people like Truman Capote, there's this really strong feeling of sort of generation after generation of really smart gay guy that knows how to talk about himself and the world. And I'm wondering what you think about what's going on today.
Gay wit? I mean, I hope you didn't think I was heterosexual, right? There certainly is gay, witty people, certainly, still. My concern is that I'm for everybody wanting acceptability, although sometimes it was fun to be an outlaw, and sometimes it was, I don't want to get married, but I certainly would vote against anybody that's against being married. I just don't want to lose our sense of humor. I think we're a little touchy. I think there can be bad gay movies. I think the gay people can play villains in movies. We can have gay villains. I'm not so touchy about it that we have to be good all the time. We have to be brave all the time, but not always good. I think we can still cause trouble. I think we should use I don't want to act up, I want to act bad, where we humiliate our enemies. Let's bring germ warfare in. Let's give everybody who doesn't vote for gay marriage, shake hands and give them impetigo. I'm for like what Abby Hoffman used to do, what the Yippies used to do. Humiliate your enemy through comic wit. So I'm for that. I'm for acting bad. Yeah, I don't want to be like everybody else. I don't want to be. But some people do, and they have the right to be straight gay people.
Do you think that the term teabagging, which you created...
I didn't create that.
Well, you popularized.
Yeah, I made it be, Republicans didn't know and they used it.
Well, it has crossed over. I was going to say it's crossed over into a different sort of thing. How do you feel about, Sarah Palin and Paul Rand?
I don't really care about her. I like Little Levi, and I'm for his porno movie called Opening Levi's Package.
Well, I think we're going to wrap it up. If you have questions for John Waters, he would be delighted to sign books and I imagine answer a question or two in the upper lobby. I'd like to thank Richard Crouse. And I'd like to thank both professionally and personally Mr. John Waters. We would all like to thank you very much for coming. We hope to see you again soon.